Okay, guys, I think I'm live. In the chat, let me know if you can hear me and see me. Okay, guys, I think I'm live. Just double checking everything here. Oh, hello. All right, I see highs and I can hear you. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Hi, Fairy Princess, Grant, Skull Raid, Adalberto Toledo. All right, all's good. Great. Woo. Very excited about this. Can't hear 11 out of 10. That's awesome. Greetings from Sydney. All right, yeah, where's everybody coming from? I'm coming from lovely Sacramento, California, right behind me. It's a nice day out here. Where's everybody from? From up the river. Are you from Reading? Have I ever been to Connecticut? I have been to Connecticut. Not Bridgeport, though, Ian. I've been to New Haven. Just briefly, though. Let's see. Oh, from Greece. Minnesota. Woo. Omaha, Germany. Holy cow. Oh, it's Saturday, so somebody else is across the time zones. Delaware, New Jersey, Cologne, Cleveland, Texas, Israel. Israel at middle of the night. My gosh, get some sleep. Washington, D.C. Ooh, Champaign-Urbana. Eugene, hey. All right, I went to the University of Oregon. I don't know if you know that, Shadow Disorder. I got a couple of graduate degrees there. Southwest Florida, Portland. I lived in Portland. It's awesome. Canada, Argentina. I love Argentina. That's awesome. Awesome. Wow. Vancouver, Salt Lake, Winnipeg, Russia. Am I subscribed to PewDiePie? No, I'm not. Folsom. Oh, you're from Folsom. Okay, yep, right up the river. I worked on Folsom's general plan briefly when I was a consultant planner, so I got to know Folsom pretty well. It's a nice little city. Providence, Rhode Island, Australia. Yeah, New Haven is cool. I'm from Fairfield. Yep, I've heard of that place. Salt Lake, Everett, Washington, Seattle. Lots of Pacific Northwest folks here, which is awesome. I love the Pacific Northwest. I think in terms of weather, that might be my favorite place to be. I am one who loves the rain. I love the dreariness. And being here in Sacramento where it's eternally sunny is actually kind of a bummer for me. Okay, so what do we got here for questions? I guess the first thing I wanted to say before we got started with questions is I'm very excited. I want to tell you guys what my next video is going to be about because I'm just really excited about it. I've been working on it now for a week or two. It will be out in like 2 weeks from yesterday, but it is a 13-minute history of city planning. So it's very ambitious. So it's in 13 minutes you get from like Mississippian culture, cities near St. Louis, all the way up until the present day. So we go through everything from the Industrial Revolution, urban renewal, all that stuff in a really compact package. So I'm kind of excited because that's something that I felt like was missing when I was a student of planning. We would learn about like a discrete thing, like the City Beautiful movement or something, but we wouldn't put it in context, the context of like the larger planning context. Like how does the City Beautiful movement relate to kind of the Industrial Revolution and what the City Beautiful movement was responding to? So my goal is to kind of help everybody have a framework for understanding kind of how cities grew and developed in the US, and then, you know, it'll be easier to sort of understand other videos. So I'm excited about it. I like history. All right, let's see. Okay, yes, thoughts on Pruitt-Igoe and the way public housing has been implemented in the U.S. I did a video on this one. I don't know if you know, Adalberto, a little bit, like why do we build the projects? It didn't touch on Pruitt-Igoe. It was on the projects in Chicago, not Cabrini Green. Oh man, I'm embarrassed. I forget the one, but Chicago ones. But it's a similar story of how do I feel about them? I mean, they were designed primarily for actually middle-class white families, but they did not move in. Lower-caste black families moved in, and I mean, like lower-income black families, and the rents that they were paying just didn't pay for the upkeep, and there was no sort of federal money for upkeep of those places, and they deteriorated quickly. So, you know, I like the idea of public housing. I'm not anti-public housing at all. I think that the government, especially with these housing crises that we're facing in coastal cities, should really be thinking about getting back into the public housing game. But the way it was implemented back in the 60s and 70s was just really unfortunate for those who live there. Let's see. I'm watching this as I play City Skylines, says Aya. Awesome. Yes, I've gotten into City Skylines more. I got to stop. I did my video on it last week, And I have to take a break because it's taking up too much of my time, and I won't make any more videos. Let's see. What do you think? So Ian asks, do you think public transit should be 24/7 in most cities? I mean, of course I want transit all the time. So it's something you could rely on and you could get by without a car, right? If you're working third shift somewhere and there's no transit, you have to take a car, for example. Of course, though, we're facing realities of shrinking transit budgets, shrinking ridership. New research is suggesting possibly due to Uber and Lyft, which is not good for those services. So it's a challenge. I understand the challenge, but yes, of course we would have it 24/7. Let's see. Oza Costa J, have you ever wrote for CityLab? No, but I really like CityLab. I think it's a great source. I like that there's somebody who has a beat there at, I think it's the Atlantic. Let's see. David McCoy, collaboration with Do Not Eat. I love Do Not Eat's work. I don't know if he needs me as a collaborator. He can do it all himself. He's amazing. Kaimon Mock asks, any lows as a city planner? I think the most difficult thing about being a city planner for me is that I am impatient. And being impatient is not a good quality if you're want to be a city planner, because the time scales that you're talking about are often very long. So I was doing plans that had a 2040 time horizon. So, you know, ideally, like, it would be all be implemented by the year 2040, and that's a long time. And that's like the end of my career. So impatience is a problem, but there's a process for a reason, and we need consensus to get things done. So I understand. Let's see. Thoughts on school districts. Should be more than one in some counties. I really want to do a video on school districts. I think it's a fascinating topic. Those are sort of, I consider them to be sort of like invisible boundaries that really shape a city, right? Like good school districts, you know, maybe get higher income residents moving into them, and then the schools are often funded by property taxes, so you have lower income schools because there's low income residents. So it's a real problem for cities, and I want to do a video at some point. I'm thinking about doing a partnership or collaboration on that one, but I won't get too much into that. But let's see. I don't know what micro condos are, Brent Robinson. Are you talking about those like little, like tiny, like those tiny apartments? I don't know. I thought they're mostly rental, but I could be wrong. Let's see. What do you think of high rises, 10 to 18 stories? Do you think it would be more efficient than low rise condos? You know, I don't know if you guys saw this. There's like a picture going around Twitter that I saw of like showing like the same density, and one is like towers in the park, like 10 to 18 stories, and then like, you know, surrounded by, you know, greenery, and then you know, 4, 5, 6-story buildings that are more kind of densely packed on the lot, and they're the same density, but one is sort of a tower model versus more of a low-rise model. And I gotta say, I prefer the low-rise model. I mean, I prefer anything that provides density enough to support transit. But, you know, I think like the Washington, D.C. model is something I really like, where I think, you know, the max number of stories is like 8 or something, because it has to be lower than the dome of the Capitol building. But that's a great city in terms of height restrictions. I really like it. It kind of feels Parisian, and they can support a metro system. So I like that model better myself, but it's not like a professional opinion. It's just a personal preference. Okay, let's see. Yeah, is it best for airports to be built as close as possible to the cities it serves? Foss is asking, or is it okay for them to be outside of the city? Better for spacing noise. Yeah, airport impacts. That's another topic I've really been meaning to do a video on. I'm adding it to the list. But it's tricky. There are so many conflicts associated with airport planning. They have to do their own land use plans separate from the cities that they are kind of next to. And you see all sorts of problems where airports try to expand, but then the city is growing up around them. You know, I think planners are sort of taught that the kind of the best uses to go around an airport, something like a golf course, which in themselves are kind of terrible land uses for environmental reasons, but you know, or like warehouses or things like that don't, you know, minimize the impact. So I don't know. I think probably keeping them farther away is better. Connecting them via transit is nice. Though I'm going to take a quick second to rant that I think a lot of people advocate for trains to the airport, which make a lot of sense. I understand. But if you're prioritizing trains to the airport, you're prioritizing transit for visitors and kind of business travelers over like residents who actually rely on transit. So sometimes that's not the most equitable choice to be making. You'd rather be spending your transit dollars helping out those who need it in your own city. But greetings from Madison, Wisconsin. Where in Wisconsin are you originally from? I am from Door County, Wisconsin. if you know where that is. So if Wisconsin is a hand, I think I'm gonna. I don't know. I can't tell if it's gonna be flipped or not when I actually show this on screen. But I am from the thumb of Wisconsin. That's where I'm from. It's beautiful there. It's called the Cape Cod. Oh yeah, it's backwards. Sorry, the Cape Cod of the Midwest. It was just a very idyllic place to grow up. It was also like very small towns. So cities kind of always fascinated me when I was a kid because I was so far from a city. The nearest city to me was Green Bay, Wisconsin, which if you know anything about Green Bay besides the Packers, it's tiny. It's like 100,000 people. Is the sort of the nearest big city. And we had to travel 3 or 4 hours to get to Milwaukee and like 5 hours to get to Chicago. So I grew up in a really isolated place. Technically it was an island. So I think that's probably why I got sort of fascinated with cities, because it was so far away for me. Okay, let's see. You should do a video on ancient city planning. And somebody says that's a good idea, Corey. Yeah, that would be cool. I think that'd be a cool like collaboration opportunity, because ancient city planning is not my forte, but I think it really is interesting. I mean, I studied in Rome when I was in college. I recommend people go check out Rome. So I did learn a little bit about ancient cities there, but I wouldn't call myself enough of an expert to do it. Yeah. Green Bay is actually the smallest city to have a football team. I know. It's weird. I don't know if people have ever been to Green Bay, but it's like, you know, a medium-sized suburb has a football team. It's just bizarre. Like the street that the stadium is on, I don't know if this is true anymore, but it was like a Kmart, a bar, a Chuck E. Cheese, and then an NFL stadium, like right next to it. It's like it's a weird thing. And then like single family homes right across the street. It's a strange place, Lambeau Field. Okay, I know. Let's see. What do you think about green spaces on roofs opposed to ground level? Did you, Mr. Budu, did you see the video? Somebody, oh gosh, what channel was this that posted it? I forget the name of the channel. I just subscribed today. They did a really great video on roofs on ground level. I'm just going to quickly check it out. Sorry, I'm going to go to Twitter here because I just retweeted the video. It was really good. Honker 3D. It's called Stupid City. I'm going to try to find the link here. Let's see. I'll post the video because I thought it was a really nice video. I'm always encouraging people who... Okay, let's see if that works. I'm encouraging people to make videos on cities. I feel like I'm a little lonely. I know there's a few YouTubers that do it, but this is a great video on kind of what I think about, what this person thinks about green spaces on roofs as opposed to ground level. And the video is called Stupid City, so you can see what he thinks. So yeah, I thought it was a good take. I generally think that, I mean, if it's a private green space, there's really just not much you can do about it. I mean, it's fine if it's private. If it's public, but it's so far out of the way that people don't even know about it, and it kind of becomes then the exclusive use of the residents nearby, then that's a problem. Let's see. Have I seen Jay Foreman's video on the planning of London? Yes, I'm a huge Jay Foreman fan. I think I'm a patron of his on Patreon. Check out his Unfinished London series, everybody, if you haven't. I plug this every time I do a stream because it's just so good. He's so funny. Someday I want to meet him, but then I would just feel embarrassed because he's so much cooler. Okay. Do you think he'll make a video about the effects of rail expansion in cities, like cut and cover metros, determinist, and mainline widening? Maybe. I mean, I think, yeah. So I've done a couple of videos on metros and mass transit, and I probably will get back to it. But I got to find a good angle. I think it's interesting, possible interesting topic, but I'm not really thinking mass transit like for the next couple of videos at least, but we'll see. What do I think about the Garden City movement and garden cities in general? Lord Dalloway, this is a question near and dear to my heart because I am currently writing my dissertation, and I am doing a chapter on sort of the where I'm using precedents from the Garden City and Garden Suburb movements. So what do I think about them? I don't really have like strong feelings actually, despite studying them. So for those who don't know, like the garden cities, they were built in England in the very early 1900s, and then in the US in the 1910s and 1920s. And they were sort of like the first sort of model suburbs. The Garden City movement was meant to be sort of self-contained cities, but they didn't really get there. But what they did was create sort of an idyllic, kind of car-free, pastoral suburban setting in response to the gritty, grimy industrial revolution city that people were fleeing from. And they have lots of cool things. Like I'm really interested in the pedestrian circulation system in those. That's what I'm studying for my dissertation. And it's really a novel concept. So I think that they're pretty cool, but they didn't, for a variety of reasons, they didn't sort of become the national model for suburbs in the US. But anyway, that's a talk for another day. What got you into urban and transportation planning, says Ishmael Serrano. That's a good question. And Colin, best food and drinks in Berkeley. Colin, I'm going to answer that real quick. The answer is I don't know, because I live in Sacramento and I'm on campus for like 4 hours a day and I bring my lunch. So I almost never eat in Berkeley, though I have eaten at Chez Panisse, which is Alice Waters' famous restaurant. I ate there one time and it was phenomenal. So yeah, okay. So what got you into urban and transportation planning? So I just want to say the power of teachers is strong. So when I was in high school, the teacher just gave me, my civics teacher gave me a book about natural capitalism is the book. And it's about sort of how we can sort of rethink how we design everything to promote sustainability. And they had a couple chapters on city planning, and one was on Curitiba, Brazil, and their bus rapid transit system, which is kind of a novel system. And sort of the idea that like people like you and me could actually go out and physically change our environment, our built environment for the better, was just like a mind-blowing concept to me, and I've been kind of chasing that ever since. Okay, let's see. Sorry guys, the questions are coming in fast here, so I'm trying to okay, let's see. What's my opinion on 5G, says Jonathan. Here in Sacramento, we're actually one of the early rollers on 5G. I have no opinion except for I like faster internet, though I will say it's really interesting because 5G systems, so in previous cell systems, you had like kind of the big towers, but here at least 5G is mounted on street poles. So one thing that the cities had to do was sort of map out every single light pole and then sort of divvy them up to say like, you know, utilities, like which utilities can essentially hang things on the light poles or utility poles. So it's been a sort of a weird kind of licensing poles to telecoms. Let's see. I read Jeff Speck's book, Walkable City? Yes, I have read Jeff Speck's book. It's great. I highly recommend it. Jeff Speck's great. I have not yet read Walkable City Rules, which is sort of the follow-up to that book, but I really want to get my hands on it. I just haven't had time to read it yet. Grant asks, are you proficient in GIS? How important is it to know for a career in city planning? Yes, I would say I'm proficient in GIS. It is important to be familiar with GIS if you want to be a planner. It is just like a standard software package. If you're doing kind of in the trenches planning, you're going to need to be making maps at some point. I always tell people though, don't become your the office's expert in GIS. You don't want to be the one who everybody's asking for help, because ArcGIS by Esri is a buggy piece of software that drives me crazy, and you don't want to be the one debugging for everybody else. So get good, but not too good is kind of my thought on that. What I think of Elon Musk's Boring Company, Justin, I did a video on that one. I am altogether skeptical about that idea. Sorry, which GIS? GIS, ArcGIS, or QGIS? Yeah, so I'm proficient at ArcGIS. I really want to get into QGIS, and I have QGIS on my computer, but it's just so different, the interface. I've had a hard time getting into it, but I will get there. Thoughts on... So Terrence is asking me about streetcars. Want streetcars to be a permanent option for transit? Streetcars are interesting. Oh, sorry, quickly. Want to do a collab with Mr. Beat? I did do a collab with Mr. Beat. It's my Chicago video. Mr. Beat's great. So streetcars, my general thought on streetcars is if they are in mixed traffic, they are essentially worse than a bus because you can block them and they can't go around you. Streetcars are built especially important to promote development more than they are to promote actual transit of people, and that's a fine separate goal. But I would not build out a streetcar network without have mode separation where possible. Okay, am I a fan of brutalism? Generally, no. I'm not a fan of brutalism. I will say I've had positive relationships with brutalist buildings in the past. For some reason, lots of architecture buildings, like Lawrence Hall in Berkeley, where I am now, or Lawrence Hall in Oregon and Worcester Hall in Berkeley, are two places where I spent a lot of time, and you sort of come to love them for their, like, if you're inside, they're sort of a great place to sort of create things because they're really raw and you don't really care if you're going to scratch something because it's just all concrete anyway. But in terms of like everyday buildings, not great. Colin Stark, thank you so much. Grab a slice at Cheeseboard. Yes, Cheeseboard. I've been there too, across the street from Chez Panisse. It's great. Thank you so much. I'm in Stack State for geography, Robert. It seems like GIS, Sacramento. It seems like GIS is the main push people are going for right now. Yeah, so like there are GIS tech people who they specialize in GIS. and that's a way to go, especially if you're sort of technology focused. You can do lots of cool stuff, writing scripts in Model Builder or Python. I've done that before, and it's fun too. So it sort of appeals to, I think, more of an analytical mind. The GIS tech folks maybe are doing less of the public engagement. And actually, I really loved public engagement. I love to work with the public. So for me, I like to be away from the computer and GIS as much as possible. Do I use AutoCAD 2D? Yeah, I've used AutoCAD. So I have a degree in architecture. So I've designed stuff in AutoCAD. Preferred street pattern, says Grant. Grid, for sure. Maybe punctuated with some avenues. What about the DC Metro? I like the DC Metro. I was there in DC in January, and I had a great time on it. Do an episode on Japanese metropolitan city design, please. We have metro areas with 30 million, 20 million people. I know, random. I want to do. I focus on the U.S. because I understand that context really well. And for me, it's hard to do videos on other countries because everybody else in that country knows those cities better than me. But I do want to do those. I do want to do more of an international focus. I also want to travel more to international places, but so my wife is pregnant and we're having a baby in June, so our travel budget is limited, and then after the baby's born, I will be traveling not so often because I don't want to leave the baby so early. So someday I will travel more, and someday I will do international videos. Thank you, Ismail. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for all your questions, too. Really thoughtful questions. Thoughts on Houston, Fort Worth? So Houston, like Dallas, Fort Worth, too big? I don't think there are such thing as a too big city. Like somebody mentioned, Japan, Tokyo was at 39 million people, 30 plus million people. And it seems to be a fantastic city. So I think the only problem is you can get too big if you're too low density and you have to drive everywhere. Then you can get too big because it takes you 2 hours to drive somewhere, and that's a problem. So if you build dense enough, there's really no limit. Is it, okay, so forever... is it possible to make a private city? And if it is, what are the essentials of such a city? Yeah, so there are private cities, like private entities like Masdar in the UAE is one. Songdo, New Songdo city in like the Busan, Seoul area is a private city. And like the garden cities I mentioned before are private too. I mean, a lot of the new suburban developments, just neighborhoods, are essentially private, right? They're run by HOA, like they have their own sort of like kind of central micro government. So yeah, it's totally possible. You can build a private city. You just have to be incredibly wealthy. Okay. Let's see. Am I a religious Jew? I'm not Jewish. What do you think of the Olmsted Park system in Buffalo? I was in Buffalo in October and I got to check it out, and I love it. I love Olmsted Parks. Great. And I love Buffalo. It's a great town. Victor, you're almost close to 100,000 subscribers. How do you feel? I feel pretty good. I will say, like, I feel like this is like, it's going to sound like BS. Like, oh, everybody says this. But when I started the channel, like, over 2 years ago, there were no real like channels dedicated to city planning. So I thought nobody was interested in this topic. So I thought if I got to 1,000 subscribers, I would be doing pretty good. And 10,000 subscribers, which at the time was like the monetization threshold, I would be ecstatic. Like if there were 10,000 people that wanted to watch my videos, it would be incredible. So I feel like I'm playing with house money right now. Like getting to 100,000 is like literally something I did not plan for. So it's really cool. I'm excited about it. And I posted on Twitter yesterday. I got to 100 Patreon patrons, which is sort of another great milestone. It's just crazy to me that there are 100 people willing to sort of pony up to help me make the videos, which has been really helpful because as some of you know, like camera equipment and stuff is like really expensive. And when I started, I was literally just filming them on my cell phone, and the microphone was like the microphone on my earbuds. And I had no lights, and I had one tripod, and that was it. So it's really helped me grow. Let's see. Have I ever been to Greenbelt, Maryland, a 1930 planned community? I was writing my dissertation today and writing about Greenbelt this very day, 2 hours ago. So I've not been there. I was in DC, like I said, in January. I did not get a chance to go, but I am fascinated by Greenbelt, Maryland, particularly its paths. So great question, Much Program. Very timely. Let's see. Terrence says, I personally don't think elevated highways are ugly, and there's a reason why cities like San Francisco... I don't think elevators are ugly, but there's a reason why... Oh, you personally do think elevated... Yes, I think elevated highways are ugly too, and they really do separate cities. Yeah, I'm really interested to see which cities kind of take down their freeways next. I hope that... I don't know if folks know, like there's a big highway, I can't remember the number, in Syracuse. I hope they take that down. It really divides Syracuse University from the downtown. It would do wonders if they got rid of it. But there's other cities that are kind of looking at that too. Let's see. Houston, Texas. Do I think suburbs are bad? I think suburbs are inefficient and environmentally costly. But I understand why people live there. I'll leave it at that. City beautiful. Or am I a numbtot? I don't think I'm young enough to be a numbtot. So I'm not in the group. But I appreciate the fact that they're there. And if I was younger, I would be a numbtot. Let's see. What U.S. city am I most excited about for public transit? I've been hearing lately that Seattle's doing great new things with public transit. They've got like all sorts of new money for like light rail and stuff. So I'm excited to kind of track them. I don't know if people have been to the website, The Transport Politic, but he tracks, I think it's Yona Freemark. He tracks all of the new projects going up for mass transit in the U.S. and it's just a fantastic resource. So if you're really excited about like, oh, like what's coming up, what cool transit stuff is happening, that's the website to check out. So go for it. Sorry. Okay. Oh, cool, Peter. You worked at a company that did feasibility study to replace the highway in Syracuse with a tunnel. They do plan to replace that highway, not with a tunnel. Yeah, I know that they're working on it, and I hope so. What cities do I find well designed from a layout perspective, U.S. or international? Gosh, I mean, I'm a sucker for Europe. I lived there. I lived in Rome for 6 months, and I've traveled around. I love the old cities of Europe because they're designed for pedestrians, right? Like the blocks are small, the streets are narrow, the sites are interesting. Walking is one of my favorite things, period. I love walking, and those are the best cities to do it in. So I love it. I understand for U.S. cities it's not always practical, but I love it. Let's see. What do you think of Jarrett Walker Human's transit approach to public transit? I mean, as far as I go, I defer to Jarrett Walker on transit. I think I've heard him speak in to a small group that I was in. I've heard him speak at conferences. I have his book. To me, like those ideas make sense. I'm not more of an expert than him, so I sort of take his word for it. But I like his kind of concepts of frequency is freedom. So the idea that the more frequent you make the transit, the less you have to kind of schedule in advance, the easier transfers get, so you can get anywhere quickly via transit. Frequency is freedom. I love that idea. So I'm on board with that. Okay, let's see. Oh, you really make great content. Thanks. Well, thank you. I love making it, and I like that people like it. What are your thoughts on California high-speed rail being deprioritized by Gavin Newsom? There's a good, timely question. Yeah, I hate that. I'm a big high-speed rail proponent. I understand that the costs have been crazy for a variety of reasons, but California is the perfect place to start doing high-speed rail in the U.S. And if we can't do it in California, it's really gonna be hard to implement in the rest of the country. So I think California has to lead the way on this, and I don't like that Gavin did not continue that policy. So I'm upset. Let's see. Thoughts on Columbia, Maryland, Charlie? I know you've asked that a couple of times. I don't know Columbia, Maryland, so I don't know if I don't have an opinion on it. Is California's problem with high-speed rail all the permits and silly environmental studies? Roger asks. I think that's some of it. I think some of it is also like lawsuits. So that's another thing too. So yeah, there's been red tape, but they have been building stretches. So in the Fresno area, there are viaducts that have been built already. Yeah, Texas Central Rail is about to get built. Yeah, that's true. Texas is the Texas Triangle is another great place for trains. So that's awesome. Okay, let's see. Florida Brightline. Yeah, that's like a privately funded thing. And I think like from what I understand, that is a rare corridor where like private trains make sense, but in general, they're tough to do. Thoughts on the original Epcot plan of Disney, Charlie? Yeah, I want to do a video on that. So I have my brother and his family live in Orlando, and my sister-in-law works for Disney. So that's when I was there last, I did the video on sort of Disney's private government, and I've been wanting to do if I get a chance to go back, I would like to do and want to follow up on Epcot and maybe even Celebration Florida with the Planet community there, which is kind of an interesting case. Let's see. Yeah, the problem of high-speed rail is the problem of land acquisition. Yes, that's true. All right. Do you sometimes think silly city regulations make your job difficult as an urban planner? Sometimes. I should just say that I'm not currently a city planner. I'm an academic. I'm getting my PhD, but I was a city planner. Yeah, I mean, so a common criticism is zoning, right? So zoning is useful in some cases, but it's really hard to design walkable cities when you have single family zoning separating kind of uses out. So there are times when like sort of tools of planning get in the way of actually doing great cities, but I won't go farther than that. Let's see. What is your opinion on the huge skyscraper spree in San Francisco, especially the new Transbay Transit Center? I mean, I don't have a strong opinion. I did hear though that the Transbay terminal is having a problem with like a beam is cracked or something. So they're having issues with getting trains and transit in there. But I don't have a strong opinion. So San Francisco has an interesting history of urban design where they try to preserve the hilly look. And they try to find places to put towers that accentuate hills as opposed to in the valleys where they would sort of level out the hills. Like the hills are sort of iconic to San Francisco, and they actually have policies, urban design policies, to sort of preserve the hilly look. So long as they're building the skyscrapers in a place that preserves the hills, that's fine by me. Andrew Kelsey, are you familiar with the Strong Towns movement? If so, what are your thoughts? I've read a few articles. I honestly don't have strong thoughts on the Strong Towns movement. I think the whole notion of fiscal responsibility of cities is a good one, that like cities should be thinking about not just what it costs, let's say, like build a road, but what does it cost to maintain it over the life cycle? And is that road going to places that provide taxes to pay for it? Like that kind of stuff, that thinking is really smart. And I know that lots of cities sort of have to keep developing to take the fees from the new development to pay for maintenance on the old stuff. And that's sort of a problem that will come to a head at some point. Let's see. How does zoning affect a city's transport system? Is it beneficial? So land use and transportation are critically linked. It's really important to think of them together. Zoning, so like I've seen instances where like cities will forbid single family zoning near a transit stop, if you're talking about transit and zoning. Here in Sacramento, for example, zoning now forbids drive-through restaurants and gas stations near transit stops within like a quarter mile, because those are just incompatible uses. So there's places where they can kind of work together. Let's see. I have not been to Indianapolis yet, so I don't have an opinion, but I would like to go. Let's see. Sorry, just reading your comments here. Thoughts on parks like the Highlands? Should cities looking at creating new as well as reclaiming old infrastructure? Yeah, I mean, I have not been on the High Line, and I'm sure, I don't know if there are critiques of it yet. I think in general, yeah, repurposing old infrastructure for public space is not a bad idea. And it seems like Chicago, what was it called? Chicago did something similar, like kind of a long linear park bikeway, which is cool. Yeah, so I like that idea generally. And I think the High Line's really cool, from what I've seen. Awesome, kid. I am subscribed. Awesome. Thanks for subscribing. Let's see. What advice would I give to a developing city, a growing city? My advice would be really consider your street networks. So I'm a big street network person. That's kind of part of what I study. Yeah, the 606, Chicago. Thank you, Dark Star Chicago. Yeah, so the crazy thing about streets are that they are there forever, right? Like there are cities in Europe that still use the roads that were laid down by the Romans, right? Like you designate a road for a city and then designate the area around it as private. That is going to be the way it is forever. So I would just tell cities that are growing and developing, get really, really strict about your subdivision regulations, your street plans, and make sure that they are forward-thinking enough to be useful in a world where we have to think beyond the car. That's my advice. Let's see. Any good advice for college classes when wanting to go into urban planning? I decided to study civil engineering before, and I want to know your opinion. Yeah, so I would say like an intro to city planning is always a useful thing. I'm sure every school that has a planning program teaches that class. I taught that class once, and it's so fun to kind of, you get a little bit of everything, at least the way I did it. And I think kind of a typical way is like I spent like a week on transportation planning, a week on economic development, a week on housing, a week on land use. So you get a good survey. So if you kind of want to get your feet wet, intro course is great. Otherwise, like I found classes on, I had a transportation and land use course that I found really interesting, like the intersection of those two. And that does a lot to explain cities generally. So it's just a really useful course. Okay. Let's see. Sacramento's going to turn the I Street Bridge into another Highline BTW, says Nissan. I didn't actually know that. I knew they were replacing the I Street Bridge, but I didn't know what they were going to do with it. So that's fascinating. Now I want to go Google that later. Thank you. Have I ever been to Connecticut? If so, your opinion. I have been to Connecticut. I was an undergrad. I was visiting somebody at Yale in New Haven, and I got lost in Vermont somehow, I was in New York State. I was there for like a night. So I don't really have a strong opinion on Connecticut, but it was nice to see somebody. Let's see. Do you think urban planning is mostly a government or private sector issue? Yeah, urban planning is really, it's like for me, like a lot of it is facilitation between stakeholder groups. And that means private developers, landowners, homeowners, renters, citizens, business groups, governments from all different levels of governments. So it's really about kind of figuring out how best to develop a city or grow a city or change a city that kind of best meets the needs of all the stakeholder groups and sort of balancing that. So it's a little bit of everything. Okay, let's see. I'm going to maybe wrap up in a little bit, like 5 or 10 minutes, but we can keep going. Okay. Do you think, would I consider visiting Australian cities? Kieran. Yes, of course I would consider visiting Australian cities. I hear great things about them. I want to visit them. But it's on the other side of the world. And I have a limited budget. But I would love to go to Australia. It looks fantastic. And New Zealand as well. I have some Kiwi friends that I love. Let's see. Why are neighborhoods, Andrew asks, why are neighborhoods with 30% African-American population considered black neighborhoods? I had not heard that before. That's another thing that I've talked about this a little bit in my upcoming video. I think I was telling you guys about history of city planning, talking about segregation and sort of kind of black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. And I actually over here have this book. It's called American Apartheid by Massey and Denton. And it is a fantastic book that talks about segregation. And it's something that people don't talk about very much anymore. I feel like after the 60s and 70s, we just sort of accepted the fact that our cities are segregated, especially northern cities, actually. So, yeah, I really want to talk about kind of that racial component sometime soon. Let's see. What are your views on Jane Jacobs' work? I'd love an episode about Jane Jacobs. Yeah, I would love to do an episode on Jane Jacobs. She's fascinating. The only reason I haven't is because I feel like a lot of people have already done their Jane Jacobs videos, like even channels that don't normally do city planning, like Vox, I think, has an episode on Jane Jacobs. And, you know, like a lot has been said about Jane Jacobs. There's been a documentary recently. So for me, it's about finding kind of a unique angle on Jane Jacobs, and I haven't gotten there yet. But yes, Luis, I hope to do something, you know, someday, but I got to find that right angle. Let's see. Is there a proper way to implement highways into a city, or are they universally bad? I mean, sure, there's certainly ways to do it that are less detrimental to the urban fabric. But you look at a city like Vancouver that has no interstates or no highways within its city limits, and it still functions. So it's definitely possible to do without it. So I would say, you really have to make a strong case for an urban freeway first. But yeah. Let's see. How would you retrofit freeways to make them better for everyone? Well, I think they're really great for cars, and any changes that you make to retrofit them will make them worse for cars, and they, by definition, would not be better for everyone. But I've seen freeways being taken down and turned into surface boulevards, which sure seem a heck of a lot more pleasant, and still do move a fair amount of traffic, though not like interstate level traffic. Yeah, consider doing a video on the planning of Barcelona. Yes, I think Vox again did a video on Barcelona's kind of super blocks or block system. So, I mean, again, not that I don't have my own unique take on it, but like my goal with this channel is to put out, you know, as much city planning info as possible. But if there's already people who've done it, I'm sort of just like, well, let's find something else and maybe I'll come back to it. My problem is that there's so many topics for videos that I want to do that I have to sort of be picky. So last year I did 20 videos, and I hope to get to 20 videos again this year. But that's actually not that many videos, and there's so many topics to do, so I really have to try to be picky. Let's see. Do I do a video on defensible space and natural surveillance? Yeah, Terrence, that's a great idea. That's one that's not on the list, but it's a great planning topic. Let's see. Charlie, Baltimore, Maryland city planning. Every time I do a live stream, somebody asks me to comment on Baltimore city planning, and I don't know why. So I need to figure this out. Let's see. Have I read Mapping Decline? I've not read it yet, Colin, but I probably should check it out. Let's see. Are you joining the CX network? I don't know what that is. 3 words. Light rail transit. Oh, that's a reply to somebody else, Nate. Sorry. I don't mean to jump in on your conversation. My 3 words would be grade separated transit, or just separation of modes. I don't really care the vehicle type, but so long as you can move them without getting stuck in traffic. Urban growth boundaries, much program. So I did my master's in planning at the University of Oregon, so I got a little bit of experience learning about urban growth boundaries. I generally think they're good, so long as you are aggressive about building dense housing within the boundary. If you essentially say, fine, you're gonna have this growth boundary, but you're not gonna build any more housing, that's a problem. And I know that the growth boundary legislation in Oregon states that you need to have like, a 20-year supply of land for housing in the urban growth boundary. But in practice, I think sometimes that land is harder for developers to actually develop, and it doesn't get developed, and they have higher housing prices. So you need to be really aggressive about building more housing. Let's see. Why do you love public transport and hate cars so much, Frogmaster? Yeah, good question, right? I don't hate cars, but they have lots of negative consequences associated with cars. And for a long time, our country has been sort of subsidizing subsidizing cars. They actually have been subsidizing planners through freeway construction. But so cars are sort of artificially cheap to own, and so are suburban homes. So we've sort of been subsidizing this car lifestyle without thinking about the negative consequences. And if you're a planner like me, and you now have people realizing, oh wait, climate change is happening, and traffic is happening, and we have all these problems. What are some solutions? Well, if you're a planner, one of the easiest solutions is cut down on car use. It solves a lot of problems if you encourage people to get out of their cars. So that's why a lot of planners are really high on it. It solves so many of our problems. Okay. How far can you get in urban planning with just a master's in GIS, Aziz? Oh, I think you're a Patreon patron, so thank you so much. Get into an urban planning with just a master's in GIS. Well, a master in GIS, you could probably become a GIS technician. I know that there are positions like that in planning offices, both public and private. So you can probably get pretty far. If GIS is what you want to do, there are lots of people who will pay money for GIS technicians. So that's awesome if that's your thing. Let's see. Cooperation with Vox would be great. Yeah, Vox is great. I don't know if they do collaborations, to be honest, or like they do it with like big things like 99% Invisible. But Vox is doing their own thing, and they're doing a good job. Was Obama city planner? He was a community organizer, but that's not the same thing. Let's see. Do you think the terrible conditions of inner cities are an urban planning failure? So I wouldn't say that inner cities are terrible. You have to be specific. There are some neighborhoods that are not good. And those are due in large part to segregation, disinvestment, redlining, all sorts of policies, bad city planning, essentially. So yeah, planning can do bad stuff. Okay, let's see here. 2 more minutes. I'm going to do 2 more minutes, guys. Thank you so much for showing up to this chat. I try to do these once a month. This is the 2nd month in a row. And maybe next time I'll bring other things to talk about. But I really do like taking your questions. It's really interesting. And it makes me think about stuff I hadn't thought about, and it helps me kind of come up with new video topics. Let's see. Docked, bike share versus stuff like Bird and Lime. Charlie, taking a lot of your questions. So in my city here we have Jump, which is dockless, and it's an e-bike system, and I really do enjoy it. So the studies I've read show that like it actually takes rides away from Uber and Lyft, which is a good thing. And more people biking is great too, because it makes a case for more bike infrastructure on our streets. So in general, I'm pro bike. More people on bike, the better. And if that makes it easier, great. Let's see. Are low density rural areas a problem for nearby cities? I'm not sure what I understand. I mean, exurban develop's always tough, but I'm not gonna. I don't know what you mean by that. I miss driving on the Alaskan Way Viaduct, says Adrian. I'm sorry. It's gone forever. I have a video on that for those who don't know. How do you plan a walkable city in a colder climate, asks Daniel. Well, I would say that, I mean, there are some very, very cold climates. Like, I grew up in Wisconsin. It's very cold. Minnesota, Minneapolis is very cold. And I understand that sometimes you might want to get into a car there. But I look at, like, Northern European cities. They might be slightly less absolutely cold than, like, the upper Midwest. But they have walkable cities. Moscow is just as cold as the Midwest, and I think it's pretty walkable from what I understand. So you can do it. Though I understand, again, that it can get dangerously cold in those places sometimes. Okay. Do you have any content on food deserts, and what are your thoughts? Says Andrew. Good question. I don't have a food deserts one yet, but I should. That's a good topic. Thank you. How come is it to have a young civil engineer turned city planner? Enrique, I don't know. I don't personally know. I don't know civil. So I know of engineers who go back to school to get a degree in planning and then become a planner. So it's not uncommon. I think civil engineering is one of those sort of related professions. So that it happens. Let's see. What's your take on the Hyperloop? I have a video on this, AD. I am not bullish on it. I think it's kind of silly, and I hope cities don't give him money to build it. Okay. And with that downer note, I think I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you so much for coming. Like I said, I'll be here doing this next month with questions if you have it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, check it out. I'm on Patreon. I'm on Twitter too. If you look up City Beautiful, find me there. You can ask me, feel free to ask me questions on Twitter too. I'm on Twitter and I will answer them if I can. But thank you again so much, and have a great Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone.